Welcome to Know Your Universe, where we discuss things that just don't fit into anything else. Today we're going to be covering all of the women who have used the name Supergirl or Superwoman. Unlike other superheroes who have passed their mantles around, there's actually a lot of people who took the name on before the one that all of you are familiar with, and a lot of them fully believed that they were in fact Supergirl. Now, joining me for today's Know Your Universe is actually Couchtomato. He does a great YouTube channel where he writes love letters to bad movies, and he looks at movies that people hate and he compares them to movies that people love. I did a little cameo over there, and you can find a link to that video in the description down below. But without further ado, let's get started. We're going to begin with the individuals that took the name before the first true Supergirl and before the Crisis on Infinite Earths. Before anything, way back in May of 1943, there's actually an issue of Superman where Lois Lane dreams that she had the powers of Superman. So she takes on a costume that looks just like his and she calls herself Superwoman. This idea was used a few times before we get a real Supergirl, but it would still take quite a few years before we would get a real one. Take the next one, Couchtomato.
Hey Benny, thanks for having me. Next was Queen Lucy, the Supergirl from Superboy 5, which came out around 1948. In this story, Superboy meets Queen Lucy from a fake Latin country. Superboy and Lucy had a romantic relationship for the issue because she moved to Smallville to have a normal life, and then she won Superboy's heart. They have a fun adventure together, and she even puts on a tan dress with a brown cape and the iconic S. At the end of the adventure, Queen Lucy returns home, and Superboy wonders if she ever thinks of him and their time together.
The next story is actually one that we've already covered, but it's that time that Superboy was turned in to Supergirl. An alien came down and Superboy made a bunch of sexist remarks. As punishment, he was given a vision of himself being turned into a woman, and he then changed his name to Claire Kent and went by the name Super Sister. If you click right now, you can get that full story.
Our last Supergirl before the real Supergirls began is from 1958. Jimmy Olsen made a wish for a Supergirl off of a magical totem. He wanted a helper for Superman, but after the two kept getting in each other's ways, they ended up fighting and trying to work alone again. Eventually, this Supergirl sacrificed herself saving Superman and she was vanished.
And this brings us finally to Kara Zor-El, the original that appeared in May of 1959 in Action Comics 252. At her conception, she was literally a female Superman that wore a costume that was mostly the same, except that she wore a skirt instead of having pants. She went by the name Kara because in the comic book Golden Age, Kryptonian women only went by one name, and it wouldn't be until later that the writers gave them the second name, turning her into Kara Zor-El. Her original origin is that she was the last survivor of Argo City, and her father invented a dome that went over Argo City and helped with the weather. When the planet exploded, the dome held the city together on a large chunk of land. They then made a propulsion system and they headed for Earth's solar system, and it took them roughly 30 years to get there. Throughout that time, Kara's parents met and they had their daughter, Kara Zor-El. Eventually, the city travels through a meteor field and it shreds the lead lining that they put into the city to protect themselves from the kryptonite that had formed underneath the city. As the residents of Argo City began to die, they sent Kara off in a pod to Earth, and eventually we find out that her parents actually survived while everyone else died because they entered a survival zone, and they were rescued by Kara and moved to the bottle city of Kandor. But both her father and mother were eventually killed by various villains and traps. While living on Earth, she went to school as Linda Lee Danvers. She held multiple jobs, and she had multiple boyfriends, even one that was half centaur. But when DC decided that its history had grown too confusing, they decided to merge everything and make one timeline. This resulted in the Crisis of Infinite Earths, and during this event, the editors decided that they wanted to make Superman the only survivor of Krypton. So in the event, Supergirl sacrifices herself, saving her cousin and the entire multiverse. But it got worse for Kara, because since they wanted Superman to be the sole survivor, and they wanted him to have already dealt with that for a while, no one actually remembered Kara having ever lived, and Supergirl was wiped out of memory. Or was she?
Since the character was still popular, in 1988, DC decided to reinvent her as a man-made synthetic life form that was made by the heroic Lex Luthor of a pocket continuum. He implanted this protoplasm with the memories of Lana Lang of this universe, allowing it to shapeshift into Lana Lang. Lex then patterned her physiology after Superman, allowing her to take on the powers of a Kryptonian. This gave her strength, speed, and flight. But since she wasn't actually a Kryptonian, she could shapeshift, use telekinesis, and cloak herself. After Superman and this new Supergirl failed to save the world, Superman took her back to the main world where she was the new Supergirl. She also went by the name Matrix. So when people refer to this version, it's typically as Matrix. Well, DC wasn't done messing around with the poor superhero yet, and in 1996, they decided they wanted to revamp her again. This time, Matrix merged with a woman named Linda Danvers in an effort to save her. This gave the young Linda all of the Matrix powers, plus the ability to shapeshift into a taller Matrix Supergirl. To make matters even more confusing for this version, she turned out to be the Earth-born Angel of Fire. Due to the storyline, things just got a little crazy for Linda and Supergirl. But let's just say Matrix goes missing and Linda retains half the powers and tries to find her. She ends up running into a time-displaced version of the original Zor-El and needs to send her back to her time to die, and it just gets weird.
Anyway, next was Cir-El, and she appeared in 2003. Cir-El claimed to be the daughter of Superman and Lois Lane from the future. She has some of the normal powers and is missing others like flight. She is also a homeless person named Mia. It turns out that she's actually a human girl altered by Brainiac to appear Kryptonian, and she dies trying to stop Brainiac. Then apparently the timeline fixed itself, and poof, she was yanked out of existence.
So finally in 2004, we got a version of Zor-El again. No crazy Matrix or possible daughters of Superman. This was Kara once again in the proper timeline, and it's the origin we all know. She was sent from an exploding Krypton at the same time as Superman and is actually older than him. But the pod placed her into a hibernation-style sleep, and she got stuck in the orbit of a meteor which delayed her arrival. She then came to Earth, Superman found her, and she began training and becoming a superhero. Then when the New 52 relaunch happened, she was brought back again, but this time, she was stuck in the orbit of the sun, which overcharged her, making her stronger than Superman. She was also very, very angry.
And that is all of the Supergirls. Now some of you might be saying, but Benny, there's also Power Girl. And you are right, kind of. Power Girl is technically another Zor-El, but she is from another timeline, normally from Earth 2, but when things got super confusing, they stopped specifying that. Overall though, Power Girl is what Supergirl is supposed to become. She is an older and more mature version that basically got stuck in our universe. And that is all of the major Supergirls that have existed. Thank you, Couchtomato, for joining us today, and if you guys want to see the video that I worked on with him on his channel, click the link in the description down below, or you can just click the link to go to his channel and show him a little Comicstorian love. I'm Benny, and I'll see you guys next time right here